I think perhaps the big question that people certainly on social media are asking is this compromising the parliamentary process which is still underway?
Not at all. We're not compromising the parliamentary process which is underway. You will recall that in our statement we were actually acknowledging that process and its impact on our thinking. So as a party, we acknowledge and welcome that process. We are a willing party is in that process. What we have said is that through that process, we're not said outside that process, we've said through that process, this is going to be our contribution.
And so why not wait until that process is wrapped up?
Let me take you back. We took a decision in conference. For that reason, we've got a conference which has given us a mandate. And secondly, throughout the year, we've been trying to, over the past 6 months, to redefine and modify our position. We've had a workshop trying to do this, a national executive trying to do this. And one of the decisions we took in the national executive was that we value the democratic values and this transformative nature of the Constitution. And we then said we'll use the parliamentary process to strengthen and clarify those democratic values and the transformative nature of the Constitution. So we've already signaled our intention that that's what the route we're going to take. And therefore, even now, we have said, having listened to the people in these hearings and in other interactions which we've been doing as part of our voter contact, we've come to the conclusion that there's overwhelming view that we need to clarify the conditions under which we will be doing expropriation without compensation.
And is the overwhelming view also that the Constitution must be amended? Is it not possible to work within the current policy framework?
Let me just say, our statement says it's possible to do that. But our reading is that people need more clarity in the Constitution, in which that's what we're trying to do at the moment.
Yeah. So let's talk a bit about this stimulus plan that you are also a part of, that the President announced in this late address yesterday. It comes on the back of these job numbers signaling that unemployment is in fact on the rise. Not good news when the President has this target of $100 billion of investment over the next 5 years. Tell us more about this stimulus package and give us some of the practicalities, not just a plan on paper, but the real on-the-ground practicalities.
Let me sketch for you first the background. I'm using construction as a basis. The highest peak we've ever had in the construction sector was 2010 when we had the World Cup. Since then, we've seen a major decline in the construction sector in terms of work that's happening. We've seen, for instance, in the last quarter of 2017, I think, about a loss of about 127,000 jobs year on year in that sector. And as we sit, 2 of the major companies in that sector are already under business rescue. That signals the kind of challenge we have. Now, if I were to take the steel and engineering industry, its production, about 40% of it is consumed by construction. If that's a knock-on effect, if you see what's happening in construction, then it's having a knock-on effect. If you look at the figures now, a number of jobs we've lost in the construction sector. You can see the knock-on effect. I'm just using one example. There could be other reasons why you are seeing what the situation. Surely, as the government as the governing party, we've got to take that seriously and begin to say, what are the key measures that we want to do?
Now, the economic analysts have told us, to make a dent in these unemployment numbers, which are skyrocketing by the minute, we need to reach 5% growth. We're now trying to scramble and scrape to make 1.3% growth. Last night, on the back of that announcement by the President, we saw the Rand taking a beating. Is this the way that we're going to attract and reach that target of $100 billion?
Let me we've got to put a package which also deals with the demand side of the economy and also with supply side measures. Among the key, if you look at the people that are unemployed. A key contingent of that is a cohort between 15 and 24 years old.
Yeah, the majority of the unemployment number are young people.
Let me just tell you, I'm trying to explain that. And I'm saying, if you look at that cohort, in reality, is some people who should be in some form of training. Our view is that that's when first of intervention, put money, put them into vocational training and improve on that's an intervention on the supply side of the equation. On the other side, we've got to stimulate demand. And part of that of those interventions are intended to stimulate demand by investing more in infrastructure and other things.
And when do we see these measures being put in place?
It's our view that we have asked, called on government. Government is going to a government Lekgotla next week. Part of the things the government has got to do is so practical. How are they going to give effect to these measures?
So then we'll get more clarity? Then people who are waiting to hear what government's plan is
government will make plans. We've made specific suggestions. For instance, among the suggestions we're making is that we've got to take hard choices. Some of those hard choices are expenditure composition of the budget at this stands, and more buyers switching more resources while sticking to the fiscal consolidation, fixing more resources towards the infrastructure spend.
What's the time frame we're looking at here? I'm harping on this issue of time frame because South Africans, as you well know, are looking for real measures on the ground that they can see now, jobs now. Let
me just say, some of the stuff, government has got the power to make decisions fairly quickly. Some of them will have an impact on the medium-term budgetary framework. In other words, the medium-term budgetary policy statement the Minister of Finance must make in October, they must be able to point a direction in terms of the practicalities of these measures.
All right, I want to ask you a question as a parting shot. This address by the President last night, some analysis around the issue that it's all part of the game of politics as we count down to elections 2019. The ANC hoping to get all of the credit for whatever unfolds in terms of the expropriation of land without compensation so that the EFF doesn't claim the credit. What's your response to that?
No, our views are not guided by what EFF does. You are going to see as the discussion unfolds the fundamental difference between ourselves and the EFF in terms of how you approach this question. So we're not on the same page. For instance, EFF want all land belong to government. So as you wake up the following morning, your house, you only own the buildings, the land belongs to the state. Our approach is a redistribution approach, which will say it's going to be targeted expropriation, with an intended purpose for that redistribution. So our approach, we've been refining it, and the decision we've taken, we pointed out in May that that's a process we're working on, and at some point we'll come to this decision.
All right, well, thanks very much for taking the time to come into studio to speak to us.
Thanks
Enoch Godongwana is chair of the ANC subcommittee on economic transformation, joining us in studio.